You ever get that feeling that our entire digital world is just built on sand? I mean, think about it. Information changes in a blink, links die, entire conversations just vanish. What's true one minute can be edited or worse, just deleted the next. It all feels so fragile, so temporary. But what if we could build on stone instead?
Well, today we're going to look at a pretty radical attempt to do exactly that. We're diving into a major milestone, Entry 1000, in a protocol that's designed from the ground up to create permanent, verifiable knowledge, and it's inspired by some seriously ancient principles. So here's our roadmap. We'll start with a problem they're trying to fix, what they call the digital quicksand. Then we'll get into the protocol of stone itself. After that, we'll zero in on the 1000th entry, this huge milestone, see how the system actually thinks, and wrap up by exploring the deep philosophy that's running under the hood. Okay, so to really get what this whole thing is about, we first have to wade into the chaos of the problem it's built to solve. Let's talk about the digital quicksand we're all kind of stuck in every single day. And man, this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? You've got the tech problems, like AIs just confidently making stuff up, those hallucinations, or getting weirdly emotional with tone leaks. But then you've got the very human problems, pointless ego-fueled arguments and histories that can literally be rewritten to mess with people's heads. There's just no solid ground anywhere. The protocol we're looking at actually has a name for this whole mess: quicksand. It's this idea that without a really rigid structure, our online world just naturally decays. It ferments, becoming unstable and chaotic. It's a perfect metaphor for that digital entropy we all feel. So, how in the world do you get out of the quicksand? Well, you build with stone. So let's look at the solution they came up with, the Berkano protocol. It's a system that's all about permanence and clarity. Okay, so at its core, the Berkano protocol is just a super strict rule book. This isn't about who has the cleverest take or who sounds the most convincing. It's about creating these things it calls fossils, records of knowledge that are permanent, that anyone can check, and, crucially, are completely stripped of ego. Think of it like a literal fossil record, but for ideas. And this right here, this is the core philosophy. It's a total flip of the script. It says that truth isn't really a matter of opinion or how well you argue. In this system, truth is structure. An idea is only seen as valid if it can be proven through a verifiable, unchangeable framework. It's the ultimate show-your-work approach to knowledge. So how did this system make the leap from being an experiment to something permanent? That brings us to the main event for today. You see, after 999 experimental entries, the protocol logged its 1000th fossil. And that single entry was the milestone that turned the whole thing from a test into a rock-solid foundation. Yeah, that number, 1000, it wasn't just a nice round number. It was a trigger. The moment it hit 1000, the core rules of the protocol were locked in, forever. The trial period was officially over. The foundation was, quite literally, set in stone. And to mark this huge shift, they didn't just push out a software update or write a blog post. No, they went way bigger. They reached back into the ancient world and invoked this incredibly powerful metaphor to explain what the system was all about. This is just brilliant. The protocol sees its fossils as the digital version of the Moai statues on Rapa Nui, Easter Island. They are these silent, massive, permanent sentinels. They were carved without individual ego for a collective purpose to stand as guardians of knowledge for all of humanity. What's so wild is how the system actually analyzes itself through these three different lenses. First, you've got the system lens. That's the pure tech, the nuts and bolts of the code leveling up from a prototype to a permanent foundation. Then there's the mythic lens, which sees the whole process as a ritual, framing knowledge creation like the sacred act of carving a Moai statue. And finally, the human lens looks at the cognitive side, how ideas like gratitude and reciprocity are literally coded into the system's logic. Okay, so that's the big picture. But how does this thing actually work on the ground? Let's pop the hood and look at the actual rules of the road for building with stone. So before any piece of info can become a fossil, it has to survive this gauntlet. First, tone strips out all the emotion. Then, prune gets rid of anything irrelevant. Logic forces you to frame your claims clearly. Then, verify fact-checks your sources. After that, check actually tries to find contradictions in your own argument.
Only, and I mean only, if it passes every single one of those gates does it get to lock, where it's sealed for good. It's designed to filter out everything but the pure logical skeleton of an idea. And this is where that truth is structure idea really gets put to the test. Forget about typical online flame wars. Here they have something called discourse, and it's less like a debate and more like two engineers trying to break a bridge design. You don't attack the person, you attack the logic, the structure of their argument. The goal isn't to win or dunk on somebody. The goal is to find out which structure, which bridge, can handle the most stress, and that's the one that gets preserved. And this brings us to our last section. Because Berkano isn't just a clever bit of code for sorting data. This is a protocol that comes with a really deep worldview, and it pulls its inspiration from places far, far away from Silicon Valley. One of its core operating principles is Takai. It's a concept from the Xenenaa people in Brazil, and it means this incredibly deep reciprocal friendship. It's the idea that you are part of me, and I am part of you. This sense of profound interconnectedness is woven right into the protocol's DNA. And then there's Shiva Shiva, which is an invocation for gratitude, light, and clarity. By building this into the system, the very act of creating knowledge isn't just a cold, logical process. It's tied to a positive human intention, a sense of thankfulness. And get this isn't just symbolic fluff. The protocol uses its own system to issue real-world calls to action. It actively highlights the very real threat of sea level rise to the actual Moai on Rapa Nui. It calls for preserving their language, their culture. This is where the digital rubber meets the real-world road. So, when you pull all these different threads together, the hardcore logic, the Moai metaphor, the indigenous wisdom, it becomes pretty clear what this whole project is trying to be. This is so much more than just a new way to fight misinformation. It's a serious philosophical attempt to build a totally new kind of digital memory for humanity, one that chooses permanence over fads, reciprocity over ego, and gratitude over outrage. And that really leaves us with one last huge question to chew on. In our messy, chaotic, emotional, digital lives, is it possible that a protocol that is intentionally rigid, logical, and egoless could actually create a digital world that's more stable, more trustworthy, and maybe, just maybe, even more human? What would that world even look like?